In today's video is one you have all been requesting for a while. Today I review Greg Doucette's What I Eat in a Day. Roll the titles.
For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you.
So first things first, I have entered all of Greg's details in to calculate his daily energy requirements. He is around 88.5 kilogram, 1.68 metre tall, and he was born in 1965, making him 45. I also added into the software that Greg is a strength power athlete and he is very active around 6 days a week. In terms of default nutrient targets, I am from the UK, so I'm using data from the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition. And in terms of calculating Greg's energy requirements, I'm using the Henry Oxford 2005 energy calculation formula. This tells me that Greg at base level needs around 2,761 calories to maintain his current weight.
Okay, it's Greg Doucette here, and I just want to show you what I eat in a day of dieting for my show, which would be about 3 weeks out right now.
Okay, so first things first, as Greg said, this is how he is eating preparing for a show, so this will not necessarily be indicative of how Greg eats all of the time. That being said, as Greg said, it's 3 weeks from a show, and I suspect he will do a good few shows every year, so this video will invariably give us a good idea of how Greg is eating for maybe a good proportion of the year.
So this is meal one, and 6 out of 7 days, it's the same thing. It's 6 French toast. Now you might ask, well, what did you eat in the off season? Well, I had 7 French toast, so I was eating more. And I just like to really soak in the whatever you call it, the egg white stuff here into the bread. And so there's just egg whites and cinnamon, and then the, what's that stuff called?
Sweetener.
Sugar twin, and what's it called there? That black stuff that you
Vanilla.
vanilla extracts.
Look, I get it, humans are creatures of habit, but I don't get why anyone would want to eat the same thing 5 out of every 6 days. Over 80,000 edible foods on this planet, and Greg chooses to eat processed refined breads, egg whites, and also synthetically artificially created sugars for most of the week while shredding. His choice, absolutely. Are there significantly healthier options out there that will give him equal levels of nutrition and protein? Absolutely. But let's move on.
So that's what's in here. And then that's just regular ass white bread, blah, blah, blah. It's not gonna kill me. You guys are eating rice, which is worse, so who cares?
So I get what Greg is trying to say here. The glycemic load of white bread is largely comparable to that of white rice. And the glycemic load is essentially the amount of carbohydrate in a portion of food, together with how quickly it raises blood sugar levels. But what Greg is eating here is essentially a standard Western type of diet. And let's quickly just define what a standard Western type of diet is. So a standard Western type of diet is characterized by health organizations around the world as a high intake of red meat, processed refined meats, pre-packaged foods, butter, candy and sweets, fried foods, high-fat dairy products, eggs, refined grains, fructose, corn syrup, etc., etc. Now let's apply those definitions to what Greg is having for breakfast. Refined grains, check. Fried foods, check. Eggs, check. Pre-packaged foods, check. Standard Western type diet, check. So standard Western diets take millions of people every year from heart disease, strokes, cancer, diabetes, and so on. Now Greg is absolutely right. Will white bread kill him? Absolutely not. But statistically, him eating the way he eats over the longer term, that cumulative effects of his dietary patterns will make him much more likely to succumb to these types of diseases. That is, unless Greg knows something that the leading scientists in the world don't yet know. Maybe it's when you combine sugar twin with white bread. It has some mystical longevity properties.
And this is my syrup of choice. I used to eat the Walden Farm stuff, but this one has 20 calories and 60 mils, which is a quarter cup. So that's about how much I use. So 20 extra calories of sweet deliciousness. Look forward to it every freaking breakfast. And when I coach people, these are on their plans. None of them get to have 6 though, because I just have a faster metabolism. But all of them get to eat this stuff, just like I do, and it works.
Let's just state here that when you coach people, your advice is not in line with health organisations around the world. And you are indeed correct, people may get big and bulky following your advice, but we shouldn't confuse big and bulky with healthy, they are two separate things. Also, Greg is correct, the sugar sweetener that he's using doesn't contain a lot of sugar since it's sugar-free. But let's just acknowledge the ingredients that Butterworth sugar-free syrup contains. Artificial flavours such as caramel colour, corn syrup, sodium benzoate, aspartame, and the list goes on. So again, it's another food that is a food that fits into the definition of a standard Western type of diet food.
Alright, so this is the finished product. This is what 6 French toast looks like. With this
Looks appetising, that.
syrup, the green shake, and this is 780 calories for those of you counting macros. And for those that are really counting macros, it's got a lot of protein. Do I care if it's got 30 or 50 or 70? No, it's got plenty of protein.
Yes, it's got a lot of protein, around 35 grams or so, but it's also got a lot of processed refined grains, sugars, artificial flavours and colours, and so on. So it's a standard Western type diet food.
This is what I'm going to eat and work on the computer, and that's meal 1. I'll probably have 5 meals and a snack today, and we'll see what it adds up to.
So let's hope things get better from here.
Okay, meal 2, the first meal was the French toast, 6 of them. Now we're up to peas, chicken, and no rice, popcorn.
Quite a concoction there, Greg.
I'm telling you, I don't eat rice at the end of a show prep. I switch to popcorn because that for 225 calories compared to that much rice just seems so much more appealing. Plus, this is way more fiber, more protein, and it tastes way better. So how can you go wrong, really?
What Greg is saying in terms of fibre, etc. is correct. I wonder if he knows that there are other forms of rice other than white rice.
So there's my veggies, chicken and popcorn, and there you go, meal 2.
Move on.
This is meal 3. What I have is a P28 wrap, which is this, which I eat every day. I always eat at least one kind of wrap. It's got chicken and all kinds of sauces, some flax seeds, and this is basically where I get my fat from, is like salad dressing, some like mustard, 10-calorie barbecue sauce, and then as you can see, I just like make the biggest wrap in the world.
Okay, good to see that Greg is incorporating some veggies into his diet, but confused by his statement around fats though, and he gets his fats from sauces. Most sauces are made with a lot of highly processed and refined vegetable oils, etc. And if this is the case, then where are the healthy monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats coming from in Greg's diet? Maybe these are coming shortly, so let's move on.
And so that's the wrap like that. And you can see it will be folded up like that. And I still have to warm it up. But this is a meal, and it's on all my clients' plans. I call it a mega wrap or a light mega wrap. This is actually the light version. It's got less calories. It's just 400 calories. You will not get fat eating this stuff because it's got 400 calories. People get fat from eating too many calories. And
that is just one reason why people become overweight. Despite Greg massively oversimplifying things and adding 2 + 2 and coming to 35, weight is a little bit more complex than that. It's not just calories in versus calories out. Thyroid issues can massively shape a person's inability to lose weight, as can gut infections such as SIBO, a person's genetics, depression, microbiome imbalances, mitochondrial function, food intolerances and sensitivities, hormonal imbalances, and yes, overeating and inactivity can cause a person to gain weight.
this is just too hard to eat. Now, normally there's spinach, and I would literally like just shove it and just kind of turn it in. And it's so filling that there's no way you can get fat eating this stuff. The secret is low calorie dense foods. This is part of it. Hardly have any chicken at all because there's already 28 grams of protein. So, not that I count macros, but there's probably close to 50 grams of protein in that and only 400 calories.
Look, I would disagree with Greg over the need to add that chicken to the meal is non-essential for human nutrition. That being said, it's a good balanced meal. For the average healthy person, excessive on the protein, but for someone like Greg who is preparing for a show, then it makes a little more sense. Anyway, let's see where Greg is tracking so far nutritionally. So I estimate that Greg is currently sitting around 1600 calories. In terms of macros, he's had a decent amount of carbs and protein, but only around 28 grams of fat. But this is obviously something that Greg is actively choosing to do. In terms of carbs, a fairly decent blend, and he has already hit 32 grams of fiber, which is very good. In terms of lipids, as expected, given that Greg has not had any good sources of fats in his diet, his omega-3s and 6s are fairly low. In terms of minerals and trace minerals, he is generally good across the board. The only thing that you could say here is that his sodium levels are a little bit on the higher side, but this is obviously an isolated day of eating, so it may be balanced out during the rest of the week. Greg's vitamin levels are all coming along okay, and in terms of a quick macronutrient breakdown, 55% of Greg's calories are coming from carbs, 29% from protein, and around 15% or so from fats. So let's see where Greg goes from here.
All right, I've finished training, so meal 4 is on the go. I finished a while ago. You don't have to eat right after the gym. There's no proof or anything that you need to do that. It's just not important. It's only been whatever hours, so.
Yes, I would agree with that. So by the time you have digested food and it has been absorbed into the bloodstream and utilized by the muscles and cells, etc., then a good few hours will have passed. So this will have little bearing on post-workout recoveries.
Anyway, 2 Fayon wraps is one of my favorite wraps. This is the brand right here, and I can eat 2 to 3 of these, but I'm dieting really hard now, so I just kind of cut back calories, so I'm gonna have 2. It's about 450 calories in both, okay, for the whole meal, so it's not really a lot. And I have just good old Costco sliced chicken, turkey stuff here on one of them, and then, you know, normal chicken on the other.
This meal is like deja vu. It's like he's an eating machine. I wonder if he actually enjoys eating this way or if it's just to serve a purpose of looking like the Hulk.
This is my pre-bed meal, my pre-bed protein meal. It's casein protein, and it's super thick, and it is just under 2 liters. So see? Super thick. Casein protein. I've got strawberries in there. I've got baby Naked climbing me up. And it's only got 300 calories, and I have like 20 different recipes that I follow. This one has no Greek yogurt, but 300 calories, all this. Half of you couldn't even finish this. It's so easy to diet when you're full and it tastes delicious. Walden Farms chocolate syrup's in there. This thing tastes amazing.
Again, it's just a lot of processed refined foods. I think that most people would acknowledge if you isolate sugars, then it can be bad in the body due to insulin problems, etc. Most people would also acknowledge that if you isolate fats in the body, then it can be problematic due to inflammation and circulation problems, etc. But for some reason, people still believe, due to the marketing hype, that you can isolate proteins, swallow them down in high amounts in protein shakes, and no ill effects will come of it. Absolute genius.
So just wanted to wrap up the video. So yesterday I consumed just over 2,500 calories. This is the lowest I've had on this entire diet. Typically I'm more at 3,000. I'm not doing any cardio anymore, so I've cut calories down a little bit. I wanted to show you what I meant by the Greek yogurt ice cream bars. These are them. Okay, I usually eat one of these a day. That's 100 calories in that, and it's basically a treat, but and this is the Score homemade protein bars. So literally make these at home from scratch. This tastes better than any protein bar on the market. I don't care what one you try. This is better by far. I like this as much as a real chocolate bar, which is insane, but there's actual Score bits in it. There's only 30 calories worth of Score bits. There's only 3.5 grams of fat. This is absolutely delicious. I keep it in the freezer. And obviously my protein powders and my plans and my recipes and everything I use all goes out to you when you hire me for coaching, and it's all part of my diet plans for year-round healthy living or trying to contest prep, get in the shape of your life. Message gregdoucette@hotmail.com.
Look, I think we've seen enough of this. If you want to get ripped and bulky like Greg in a way that doesn't fall in line with health guidelines around the world, then by all means go and order his coaching sessions. And on that bombshell, let's total up Greg's day of eating. So I calculated that Greg ate around 2,500 calories. This is slightly under what his body will require in terms of calories on the blue line, but obviously this is an eating pattern to shred. In terms of macros, carbs were under health guidelines based on his metabolic profile, but in terms of proteins, 200 to 250 grams, and it could have been a fair bit higher. Next up, we have low levels of fat intake, but this was obviously deliberate. In terms of carbs, a good blend across the board, although probably slightly overdoing the processed refined carbs and sugars. Fibre was generally very good at around 51 grams for the day. For his lipid intake, it was good to see that Greg's intake of saturated fats were low, but unfortunately so were his levels of monounsaturated fats and omega-3s and 6s. Now, if this is how Greg is eating multiple times a year for 3 to 6 weeks at a time, then having such a low fat intake will not be great for the body. Fats play an important role in hormone production. They also play an important role in the stockpiling and absorption of fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E and K. Fats are also pivotal to the structure of your cell walls and cell membranes. Eating like Greg is eating here is not conducive for optimal health, and again, it certainly does not fall in line with any health recommendations around the world. This is probably the last thing on Greg's mind because he would simply say, oh well, look at the size of me. In terms of minerals and trace minerals, Greg was generally okay across the board, as was he for his vitamins, although his vitamin A and B6 were a little bit on the low side. As a quick macronutrient analysis, 46% of Greg's calories come from carbs, 38% from protein and around 14% from fats. In summary, a lot of the foods that Greg was eating can be characterised as standard Western type of foods. Not too many whole foods, a lot of processed refined foods and sugars, a lot of processed refined grains, and a lot of pre-packaged foods and so on. This was obviously an isolated day of eating, and obviously Greg was eating in a certain way to achieve a certain weight and body goal. But regardless, eating this way does not conform to health recommendations around foods, proteins, fats, sugars, processed refined foods, and everything in between. So as I said earlier, buy his meal plan if you want to look like him. Buy a consult from him if you want him to tell you how to lift weights like him, but don't for 1 minute confuse the shape of his physique with actual health. So that's the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, remember to look after your body because it's the only place you have to live. And I'll see you next time.